Welcome to the show. It's your girl Sarah right here on Relax Radio. Now, I'm very, very excited to be here on this beautiful Tuesday morning because we have a lot of fun and interesting things that we will be sharing with you on this beautiful day. So make sure you stay tuned to Relax Radio because I have a lot of important information that I will be sharing with you today, right here on the sunrise. And I'm here to keep you company all the way until 9 a.m. So make sure you stay tuned. And also, don't forget to actually go follow us on our socials, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. That way you can actually make sure that you're a part of this conversation from anywhere in the world at any time of the day. And don't forget to go download our app as well, because that will definitely help you stay informed and educated about everything that is happening in the world, and you can listen into the conversation at any time you want, so don't forget to do that. Okay. um, and if you want to get in touch with us, if you want to share your thoughts, your opinions, if you've been in similar situations like the ones we're talking about right now, make sure to text me on 07852473 to get in touch with me, so you can tell everyone who's listening in about your personal experiences, about your thoughts, your opinions as well, because that's what Relax Radio is about. It's always about your opinion. It's about what you want to tell us, what you want to hear. So make sure you tell me, because we always prioritize you. Okay, now don't forget to do that. You're hanging with your girl Sarah right here on the sunrise, and I'll be keeping you company all the way until 9 a.m. So, the conversation we're having today is something that's very important, something that a lot of us can relate to, especially because we're talking about, harassment for women. We're talking about making the streets safer for women. And that is a huge problem here in the United Kingdom, again, because we've come across so many different instances where women had to, they didn't feel safe. They felt like they were threatened, their lives were threatened when they were walking home after work, or when they were walking home after something. And the what we need to keep in mind, or what we need to realize, is that no one can feel that way, especially in your own country, in your own neighborhood. You don't feel safe walking alone at night because you're a woman. Something could happen to you, and that's not a great feeling, and that's not something that anyone should feel to begin with, right? And the reason I'm saying no one should feel that way is because, look, the reason you are alive in a certain you're alive, and you're living in a certain neighborhood, in a certain area, is simply because of the fact that you know that if you live there, your rights are going to be protected. If you live there, your freedoms are going to be protected, your liberties are going to be protected, and no one is actually going to abuse you, or no one is actually going to threaten your life. However, because we live in this day and age where, regardless of all these regulations, regardless of all the rules and laws that are in place, regardless of all of those things, what actually happens is, even though we have all of this things, don't like things things to make sure that everyone is safe, it's not actually a safe place for women, right? And the reason that is because a lot of men out there, and I'm not saying only men, but a lot of people out there especially, feel entitled to make opinions, or they feel entitled to opinions, to comments about women who are walking. They think it's okay to follow a woman, and they think it's okay to actually, maybe say something to a woman that's walking by. And the truth of the matter is, it's not. You might think that you mean it in a good way. Look, there are so many men out there that I've come across. There are so many people out there who I've come across that say, look, the only reason we say things to women, or we make comments about the way they look and whatnot, is because we want them to know that they look pretty or they look beautiful. Well, in all honesty, as a woman myself, it's not the best thing to do. I definitely do not appreciate, and I know I'm speaking for the rest of the women out there as well, we definitely don't appreciate it if you are some random man on the road and you say something, even if the intention that you say it with is good. We definitely don't see it that way. Okay, we definitely don't look at it in that way, because first of all, we don't know you, and second of all, we're literally scared of our lives every day, right? Scared for our lives every day. And the reason we're so scared for our lives, and the reason we're so concerned about our lives, is simply because of the fact that every time a woman steps out, chances are, she's going to get assaulted, she's going to get abused, she's going to get raped. And we've heard so many different stories about women who went missing in England, right? For example, I can name one person, Sarah Everard, right? Who everyone knows about. We all know her story, and it's not just here in the UK, everyone in the rest of the world knows her story as well. And that's why, as a woman, it's so dangerous, it's so scary for you to actually, head out without thinking and worrying about your safety. And what you should find funny, what I find funny, is that we call ourselves, one of the most democratic, one of the most developed, one of the most liberal societies in the world. However, having said all of that, women still have to fear for their lives. They still have to fear if when they go out, they're going to, be abused, if they're going to go through some form of assault. Women still have to fear that. So how exactly are you then calling yourself, the most democratic of societies, the most liberal of societies? People have rights, we care about people, but still people feel unsafe and threatened when they go out, which is one of the biggest questions I have, right? And if you do have questions like this, please do share with me, because I want to, I want to know what you're thinking. I want to know how you feel about this, because I know I'm not the only one who passionately feels about making the streets a safer space and a safer place for women, right? There are so many men out there as well who definitely want to make the streets a safer place for women, but the way things are, the way the structure is, it makes it very, very hard for them to come and voice out their opinion as well, right? And that's why you should do it here, right, on Relax Radio. Do it right here on Relax Radio, because it's a safe space for everyone to talk about whatever it is that they want to talk about. Okay, make sure you tell me what you feel about this topic, tell me what you understand, or tell me how you feel like you could change and make the streets a safer place for women. Please do let me know. You can text me on 07852473473, or you can even call me up on the same number. Just make sure you get in touch with me and you share your thoughts and your experiences with me, because I know this is something that a lot of us can relate to, regardless of whether you're a man, you're a woman. If you felt like it wasn't safe for you in the streets, make sure you get in touch with me and make sure you share your thoughts and stories with me as well. But right now we're talking about making the streets a safer place for women. So let's get back into that conversation, right? And I have to say that women, the UK cycling infrastructure is in fact quite hostile to women. And it, because there are so many smart new measures in places like Paris and Lisbon, it just goes to show that when it comes to the cycling infrastructure in the United Kingdom for women, that those things need to change. That definitely needs to be a change that is made if we are to move forward. Because look, we've been resisting, we've been keeping quiet for all this time. We've definitely said, we've just sat down and waited and been silent this whole time about how much we feel threatened and harassed when we go on the streets, right? But obviously, ever since the things that happened last year, people haven't been as silent as you'd want them to be. And I think that's good, because at one point we do have to start fighting for our rights. At one point we have to, go up there and tell them, look, we're not okay with the fact that we feel threatened every time we step out, because no one else feels that way. Especially if you're a white, cisgender heterosexual man, you're not going to feel threatened when you go out. Sometimes if I want to run at night, if I'm going for a run or if I'm going for a jog at night, I dress up like a man, because that way is much more safer for me than to actually go out there and pretend I'm a woman. I mean, dress the way I normally am, because it's going to get me in a lot of trouble. It's going to get me in a lot of, threats as well. So what I do is I always wear these, baggy or baggy t-shirts, or wear like baggy jerseys that are very big for me, and I wear track bottoms and I wear shoes and I put my hair in a bun and I put the hood up on my jersey, and that's how I run, because I know that if someone realizes I'm a woman, and especially at night, if I'm running and someone realizes I'm a woman, then I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to have a lot of, danger, especially because I'm a woman, right? And regardless of the fact, of whether it's running or walking or whatever, the streets should be a safe place for women. But given the fact that when we use public transport, we're not safe, when we're walking by ourselves, we're not safe, cycling does in fact help a lot of us, because of the fact that, when you're cycling, you kind of get to decide which route you're taking. You get to decide what road you want to take and how exactly you're going to go, right? And that's why it's important that we all start, we start with cycling, we start with making a safe space for women to cycle, because the cycling infrastructure in the United Kingdom is in fact very, very hostile towards women. And because measures have been made in places like Paris, because measures have been made in places like Lisbon, it's important for us to actually, start making these same changes, start taking these same measures here in the United Kingdom as well. Now, women cyclists in the United Kingdom are twice as likely as men to have faced harassment by drivers, and this was actually shown by research. And come on, it was enraging and exhausting to read all these comments on social media in the wake of Sarah Everett's killing, from men suggesting that she had made a poor decision to walk home alone in the dark. Look, I should be allowed to walk home alone in the dark, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm an adult and I shouldn't have to fear for my life, and I don't have to feel like my life is being threatened just because I'm doing the same thing that other people are allowed to do, the same thing that other people can do without feeling that same sense of threat, without feeling that same sense of fear, right? Every day, right? Every day, women and gender non-conforming people actually reflexively make these calculations about their safety, in a way that most men don't have to. And every day, when if we're leaving home work late, we're always thinking, look, what route should I take? Should I, maybe use public transport? Should I walk? What is it? And the fact of the matter is, a lot of the other, not a lot, but basically all the other men out there don't actually have to make these same decisions that we make. They don't have to, they don't have to fear for their lives when they're walking home. They don't have to fear for doing simple things like going for a run or walking home, because we live in a society that have normalized the way in which men can move around as they please. It makes it very easy for them to actually move around any way they want, whereas women have to, think twice. Women have to always you know be like, okay, am I doing the right thing? Am I taking the correct route? Am I going to get in trouble if I don't take this route, right? So women always have to make the choice, whereas a lot of men out there don't have to make the choice, because that's just how our society is. That's just the way it works. That's just the way it exists, right? Now, to get back into that conversation, now there are a lot of entrenched gender norms and expectations, which are in fact a large part of this picture, right? And they're compounded by the physical design of our public spaces as well, which is very often based on the needs of these white cisgender heterosexual men in particular, right? And let's be honest, a lot of these things that we use, a lot of services that we use, a lot of the things that are designed, it's made for these white heterosexual cisgender people, right? Cisgender men in particular. And that's why it makes it so easy for them to actually, move about without fearing for their lives, to, make simple decisions without, overthinking that whole thing, because that same decision, a woman has to think it through about 1,000 times just to make sure she's safe. Now, like I said, the UK cycling infrastructure is in fact very hostile to women. So we need to look at it again, and we need to look at it and figure out what we need to change and why these measures are actually going to help us deal with the whole problem of making the streets a safer place for women. Now make sure you stay tuned, because right now we're going to head into a small break, and after that we will be back to keep talking about making the streets safer for women. welcome back to the show. It's your girl Sarah right here on Relax Radio. Now we're having a very important and interesting conversation, in fact, about how the streets, in fact, aren't a safe place for women, especially because of the harassment they face, especially because of all the other threats and the danger that they face, especially when they're traveling home or they're traveling to work, and why women shouldn't actually have to feel that sense of danger, that sense of risk, especially because the streets are for everyone, right? It's not just for a specific set of people, it's not just for a specific set of human beings. So why is it that women always feel so unsafe? Now, we were talking about instances earlier where a lot of women had to go through situations, had to go through instances where they felt like they weren't safe, and how it sometimes even resulted in women disappearing, in women being murdered, and in women being sexually abused and harassed, assaulted, and even raped. Okay, so this is an important conversation, because even though we talk about this, even though we've seen how this happens on there's an increase, it happens at an increasingly alarming rate, and even though we know it happens, and even though we know that this happens, there still hasn't exactly been any sort of steps, any sort of change that has been made to make the streets a safer place for women, to make sure that women feel safe in the streets. So obviously that's a big problem we have. So that's why right now we're talking about cycling, because cycling does in fact, give a woman much more control over the route she takes, and how that is actually going to help her stay much safer. I mean, obviously, it doesn't mean that it's going to be 100% gone, but at least, it's better for you to have some form of control about the route you take than nothing at all. Right. So that's what we're talking about. But before we get into the conversation, I want to very quickly remind you that you can, in fact, be a part of the show. All you need to do is just text me on 078 to get in touch with me and share your thoughts and opinions with me. Make sure you share them, because I know, being harassed on the streets, feeling like something might happen to you is something that a lot of us can relate to. So make sure you get in touch with me. Feel free to share your story with me. Feel free to share your thoughts with me, because it's definitely going to help us have a better conversation. It's definitely going to help us raise much more awareness about all of these problems that a lot of women face every day. Right, so make sure you do that. And also, don't forget to go follow us on our socials, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. It's definitely going to help you, stay focused. It's going to help you be aware and updated about everything that is happening around the world. So make sure you do that. And also, don't forget to go download the app, which is available on both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. It will definitely help you stay informed. Be informed. Join this conversation at any time of the day from anywhere in the world. So make sure you do that. But right now, let's actually get back into our conversation. So, cycling doesn't actually it does not actually eliminate the risk of harassment or violence for women, but it at least gives more personal control over route, speed, and time of travel. And it also removes some of that vulnerability that comes with walking or being trapped in a dangerous situation on public transport or even a taxi. Right, so that's why cycling seems like a better alternative, seems like a better option, because if you cycle, then you have a higher chance of figuring out which route you want to take. And because it's cycling, it's not like you're going to be in that place for a really long time. So a cycling and urban design expert, Tiffany Lamb, actually had some thoughts about this, which I will obviously be sharing with you. And she said that she became a cyclist all the way back in 2013, and as soon as she started cycling, she actually felt very liberated from street harassment. And I think a lot of women who have started cycling, a lot of women who have chosen to cycle to and back to and from work, have actually found that they have much better liberation in terms of street harassment, because they have a certain level of control, certain sense of control, especially when they're traveling in the streets. So what Tiffany had to say was, she was never still long enough for someone to try and harass her, even if she were, she could get away so much more faster if she was on two wheels, right? And that's why cycling is in fact being recommended, because if you are in a situation like that, you can get away from them as fast as possible, as opposed to if you were if you were walking, or as opposed to if you were using public transport, right? So that is what she had to say. Now, evidence from other countries show that women are actually much more likely to cycle than men, where when when there is supportive cycling infrastructures in place, things like bike lanes, and even these bike lanes have to be well lit and fully separated from traffic, and the safe routes that facilitate diverse journeys, and actually make sure that these bike lanes actually facilitate diverse journeys, right? And not just these commutes um, from outer to inner city, or inner to outer city, and vice versa, right? Make sure that it's diverse, make sure that people can go to a lot of places, and make sure it's well lit, and it has like CCTV and whatnot, just to make sure that women are safe, just to make sure that they know that they aren't being followed, that they know that, look, I have much more control about what route I take, and how, and at what time I leave, right? So that's important. Now, that is what we need to understand, and that's a lesson we need to take from other countries as well. Now, there are a lot of other countries here in Europe that actually have measures like that, that have actually helped women face much less sexual harassment, much less street harassment, than what they used to face back then. Okay. However, regardless of all of these things being in place, we have to look at a few statistics from other countries to actually realize how far behind or how far along we are. Now, in the Netherlands and Copenhagen, for example, 55% of journeys by bikes are in fact made by women. Right now, in Paris and Lisbon, the number of female cyclists have actually increased with recent investment in protected bike lanes and other measures. However, a lot of women in the UK feel that cycling is not for them, right? Just like how they feel a lot of the other things in this country are not for them, especially because of the way in which it's structured. Right now, to get into more conversation about that, to actually tell you why women feel that way, you can be, and ways in which you can be a part of this show. All you need to do is just text me on 0785247347 to share your thoughts, your opinions, whatever it is that you want to share with me. Make sure you do that, because it's definitely going to help you have a better understanding, have a better idea of this conversation, and also help you to have a better conversation and better education and awareness about whatever we are talking right now, which is basically about street harassment, how if women started cycling, we can actually make sure that the streets are a much safer place for them. Now, the reason I'm saying this, the reason I said that a lot of women in the UK feel like that cycling is not for them, is because even when you're traveling on the road, right, even when you're using public transport, women don't feel safe. And that, look, I understand that there has been certain steps that have been taken, I understand that certain rules and regulations have been implemented. However, even though all of those things are in place, even though all these different rules and regulations are in place, women still get harassed, right? Women still feel uncomfortable heading out. So a lot of women in the United Kingdom feel like regardless of just cycling, leave cycling aside, but they feel like the justice system, they feel like society in itself is not for them, because it's built in such a way where even if something happens to the woman, what happens is we will blame the woman, we will ask the woman to have accountability for something that was committed by someone else. So that is a huge problem that I've had, and that's a huge problem that the feminist movement has as well, because what the feminist movement believes, or what a lot of women believe, is why exactly is it that women need to be held accountable for the action of some other group of people? For example, why do women have to be held accountable for getting raped? Is it actually the rape, is it actually your fault that you got raped, or is it actually the rapist's fault? Because in my opinion, it's not your fault, it's a rapist's fault, right? Because just because you're walking on the road, just because you're doing what normal human beings do, that doesn't mean that it gives anyone the grounds to harass you, assault you, or even abuse you, right? Which is a huge problem that we have in the UK, because a lot of people feel like they're entitled to make comments, they feel like they're entitled to say things about women, they feel like they're entitled to give opinions about women, and the way they should behave and the things they should do, right? Which is quite ironic, But to get back into a conversation, a lot of women don't feel like cycling is for them. And the 2019 Sustrans Bike Life survey actually found that 76% of women in the UK never cycle, and only 9% of women cycle regularly, compared to 21% of men, with women from ethnic minorities actually the least likely to cycle. Okay, so if you're from the majority community, then 9% of women will cycle regularly, whereas 21% of men will actually cycle regularly. So obviously there's a huge gap, there is a huge contrast between those two percentages. And if you compare ethnic minorities, if you compare LGBTQ people, those people are much much less likely to cycle, because you're going to get in trouble, or something's going to happen to you simply because of who you are, right? And that's a big problem that is there. Now, the survey also found that 36% of women, or rather women who do not cycle, would actually like to start cycling. Okay, so all these women, they want to cycle. It's not that they hate cycling; they want to do it because they feel like, okay, I'll have much better control. I'll have a much greater sense of control within my route. However, even though they want to do that, they can't actually do that because of because of the lack of protective measures that are in place to actually protect female cyclists, right? Now, there's also this concern about the danger from traffic, because that was the main reason for non-participation that was given by all of the respondents who don't actually cycle. And it was also disproportionately a concern for women. And it's hardly surprising, because research has found that female cyclists in the UK are in fact twice as likely as men to have faced near misses or harassment by drivers. While a US study actually found that drivers are 3.8 times more likely to pass female cyclists too closely than male cyclists. Okay, so there is in fact a lot of there is in fact a huge problem there as well, because if you saw a woman cycling, you would harass them as well. So then you begin to understand, look, when it comes to harassment, it's not something that it's not something we as women can do something about, right? Because look, we've tried to change everything we do, right? We don't wear short clothes anymore, we try to not go out at night, we try to use different routes. However, even if we do all of these things and we still keep getting harassed, then obviously it's not our fault. It's not something we're asking for, to put it quite simply. It's something that needs to structurally change from a grassroots level. We need to start educating people. We need to start telling them, look, it's not okay to do this. It's not okay for you to make people feel like this. So make sure you stay tuned, because right now we're actually going to head into a small break, and after that we will be back to keep talking about harassment and how to make the streets a much safer space for women.
The valuations that you place on an asset are always behind you. It's always in hindsight. It's never in front of you. And that's one of the challenges, right? Because you're always valuing what happened yesterday, and what you need is what's going to happen tomorrow. What am I saving or investing for? Why am I doing it? When will I need the money? And how much money do I need? Yeah. So that's quite important, because when you're looking at your net worth, you got to start with saying, well, what do I want my net worth to be, so that there's a goal, and then work backwards. How do I get there? And if I can start with £50 or $50 a week, if I save that every week, and you can go online and use calculators online. I don't have to teach you the maths behind it, but you can say, okay, and if I get a 3% return and I put this away for how long will it take to reach my goal? And that's called just this basic cash flow projection calculations. And it's what we use in financial planning all the time. What we say to clients is, we say, okay, what is your goal? What is your objective? Where do you want to go to? And we discuss that in a lot of detail and over most of the meeting. And then the rest of it is saying, okay, in your exact circumstances, with your risk profile, with how you feel about investments and pensions and taxes and where you are and who you work with, and your education level or your lack of education, or how involved you want to be. There's a lot of variables that we take into account, and then we say, okay, here's a plan. You start like this, that's great. And then we review it all the time. And we say, okay, we need to increase it, we're on track, we're not, this is what has happened. Because remember, when you're dealing with assets, the valuations that you place on an asset are always behind you. It's always in hindsight. It's never in front of you. And that's one of the challenges, right? Because you're always valuing what happened yesterday, and what you need is what's going to happen tomorrow. So that's a struggle. Yeah. So there are strategies everywhere from £50 a week up to £100 million, and they're different. Right? They range differently from everyone, but and from country to country, to be fair. Different countries have different tax laws, so different vehicles. But from your point of view, at the sort of normal end, I'm not going to call it the low end because I'm in that boat as well. It's as tax efficient as you can get it. That's where you start. You use all the tax efficiencies, and then you step up into different things.
Welcome back to the show. It's your girl Sarah right here on the Sunrise. It is the second hour of the show, and I'm very, very excited to be here because we're having a very important conversation about harassment for women, especially in the streets where women don't feel safe, and why women constantly, feel like constantly feel threatened, feel like they have to take extra steps, extra measures to make sure they're safer, especially when they're going out. So that's a conversation we're having, and I'm very, very excited to be here. On this beautiful Tuesday morning to share these thoughts, to share this important conversation with all of you who's listening in. Now, make sure you stay tuned because I have a lot of interesting content coming your way. But also, before we head back to the conversation, I want to very quickly remind you that you can, in fact, be a part of the show. All you need to do is just text me on 078 to be a part of the show and to share your thoughts and opinions with me. Don't be shy. Make sure you call me, text me, whatever it is. Make sure you do that, okay? And also, don't forget to go follow us on our socials, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. It's definitely going to help you stay informed and updated about everything that happens in the world. And don't forget to go download our app, which is available on both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. It will definitely help you to be a part of this conversation at any time of the day from anywhere in the world. So make sure you do that. But right now, let's actually get back into our conversation about cycling. Harassment faced by women, especially during especially women during 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 night or when they go out. So make sure to stay tuned because we're having this important conversation. Now, interventions to get women cycling, in fact, often focus on building confidence rather than designing infrastructure differently, right? Which is a complete mismatch of the problem and the solution, because the problem is that women don't feel safe riding bicycles, and that's simply because of the fact that there isn't proper lanes out there, there isn't proper safety mechanisms for women out there who want to cycle, right? And whereas this is a problem, the answer for that, in terms of all the designs and the solutions that are available, they focus on building confidence rather than actually designing infrastructure for women to feel much safer. So there is a huge mismatch in terms of the problem and the solution. So that is something that needs to be focused on as well. Now, while well intentioned, these initiatives actually reinforce the narrative that it is, in fact, women's behavior that needs to change and not men's actions or the way we plan cities, towns, and even transit routes. And that's what I was just telling you about earlier as well, right? It's not, when you build things like that, when you try to focus on a different solution to the actual problem, or you focus on a solution that does not address the problem at all, you in fact reinforce this behavior that everything that happens to women is in fact the woman's fault. It's not something that men need to change, or it's not something that needs to change in terms of the way this is the city and the city and the society's plan, but rather the fact that it is a woman's fault, right? So the government's view on the government's new cycling, or rather new cycling and walking strategy that was released last year, actually demonstrates a seemingly genuine commitment to actually improving cycle infrastructure across the country, and it even outlines some promising steps, including a lot of these that would actually benefit a lot of female cyclists. So it's important for us to actually put this into work, right? Because it's very easy for us to release a bunch of documents, release strategies, draft proposals, get them approved and talk about them and say, like, these are the changes we're going to make, this is what we're going to do, but not actually do it, right? And that is something that we need to do as well. If we're going to be talking, we need to walk the walk. Just as much you're talking the talk, you have to walk the walk as well. So it's important that if you're going to introduce all of these measures, if you're going to talk about introducing these measures, that you actually introduce them instead of just, saying, look, we're going to do this, but not actually do it, right? And this proposal or this recommendation that they released last year also includes no significant analysis of the gender or other inequalities that inform our existing cycling infrastructure, or how to take the needs of different groups into accounts. So again, when it comes to a lot of these strategies, when it comes to a lot of these policies, they're focused with only one group in mind, but that needs to change, because we need to start being more inclusive. We need to start making sure that when we are, when we are thinking of infrastructure development, when we're thinking of making the city a safer place for people, that we don't only keep in mind white heterosexual cisgender males, right? We always need to keep in mind that there are women, there are disabled people out there, there are the LGBTQ community exists. So we can't always only include just one group of people, but we need to in fact start being more inclusive and have much more diverse strategies to make sure that it addresses all of these different communities. Okay, so now there's in fact like no good or proper analysis of these other groups, and better analysis of differences in the kinds of journeys made by men and women is in fact very vital in terms of implementing these policies. You have to make sure that the policies you implement, you have to make sure that whatever it is that you implement are in fact considered properly, that you do a proper research, or you properly analyze how the routes and the journeys taken by men are very different from the journeys taken by women. Okay, and that's always important to keep in mind as well. So most signature cycling architecture, such as cycle super highways, is actually designed to take people from outer city to the inner at peak hours, and those journeys are in fact much more aligned with men's traveling patterns than women's. Okay, and less priority is also given to facilitating safe cycling on outer to outer city routes, especially short trips and off-road routes, all of which are much more likely to be taken by women. So you need to start focusing on what exactly you need to prioritize, right? And given that women are actually much more likely to use several modes of transport and a trip chain, which is basically a multi-stop journey, more attention also needs to be paid to linking up safe bike routes with the other forms of transport, right? With greater provision of secure and well-lit bicycle parking at transport hubs. So it's important to keep that in mind as well, because sometimes say you cycle somewhere and then you take the train. If you're going from inner city to outer city, or you're going between two cities and whatnot, sometimes the places where you have to you have to park your bicycle, these transport hubs, they themselves don't have enough light, they themselves don't have enough security. So the moment a woman tries to cycle and go and get her cycle back, she's going to unnecessarily put herself in a lot of danger, simply because our structure, simply because the way it's designed actually doesn't help women at all. So it's very important to keep that in mind as well, because that is a huge problem that a lot of women face, especially when they're going out on the streets, right? And it's important for us to focus on those problems as well, just to make sure that we make life much easier, and definitely make it much better for a lot of women out there. So like I said, in terms of the infrastructure, it's very easy for you to have these different policies, different recommendations, like different strategies about the different routes that women should take and whatnot. But if you're not actually going to build better infrastructure in those those routes they use, if you're not going to build if you're not going to have better lighting, and if you're not going to properly analyze the differences between the routes that are taken by men and women, then it's definitely not going to solve the problem that we have to begin with in the first place. So it's important for us to tackle this one issue. We need to make sure that we tackle these other issues as well. Okay. And there has been this recent expansion of cycle friendly initiatives, such as low traffic neighborhoods, or even and because those things like low traffic neighborhoods exist, or that it has recently expanded. It has also been criticized for reducing the natural surveillance from traffic, right? Which means that women feel less safe walking in the dark. But this also sets up this false opposition that between female cyclists and pedestrians, who in basically in reality have the same simple demand to be able to get home safely. This shouldn't actually be too much to ask for, right? Because you're basically making it look like female cyclists and pedestrians want two different things, and it's hard for you to cater to both of those needs, when really they both want the same thing. They just want to be able to get home safe. They just want well lit streets. They just want to make sure that every time they step out of the house, that they don't get harassed, and that they don't that they don't feel like their life is being threatened, and that they can get back home without dying, or without having to go through all of the trauma that they have to go through when they're walking on the road. It's quite simple, because both of these groups actually want one thing. So why is it so hard for us to actually switch up the system to create infrastructure to help these groups? And I'm not something else we need to keep in mind is women isn't actually the women in the United Kingdom isn't in fact a simple minority, right? There is quite a large amount of women, and just as much as women, there are other marginalized communities as well, such as the LGBTQ community, who also face a lot of harassment when they're traveling on the streets. So the best way then to actually to solve all of this problem, to actually make sure that we address this problem, is to make sure that we change the infrastructure, we change the way in which we see the problem, and we have a proper solution to the problem, instead of having a big problem solution mismatch that definitely doesn't help help the people who are facing the problem. Okay. And obviously it goes without saying that public space will not actually be a truly safe space for women without a much broader reckoning with the gendered power structures and the inequalities that in fact constrain our lives, right? And there are so many inequalities, there are so many power structures that need to change for public space to be a much much safer space for women. So if that's the case, if it's all about making it a safer space for women, we need to make sure that we start changing everything, not just one thing but everything, because otherwise we're never going to have a safe space for women, right? And investing in infrastructure that actually affords women greater control over their own safety and mobility in a society that simultaneously denies them these and blames them for not protecting themselves would actually be a good place to start, right? Because as society, this is the biggest hypocrisy of it all. We're somehow supposed to be safe, and we talk about sexual harassment, we talk about street harassment, but the moment it happens, we are very quick to blame the woman. We're very quick to say, look, it was your fault. It was your fault, you shouldn't have gone out at that time, or at that night, at that time of the day. And then while saying that, they will simultaneously say, look, we're not even going to include proper infrastructure for you to save yourself, we're not even going to include proper infrastructure to make sure that you can travel home safely. So there is a lot of hypocrisy in all of that, and there is a lot of things that don't add up to me as well, but that's just the way that things currently are. And hopefully these things are going to change. Hopefully it will be a much safer space for women to travel. The roads will be much safer, the streets will be much safer, and we can actually go to work and go back home without worrying for our safety without thinking of all the different things that could go wrong. Because to be quite honest, as a woman, I am sick and I am tired of constantly trying to figure out if I can go home safe, right? So that's important, and that is why this conversation is important as well. Now make sure you stay tuned, because I will be back in a few minutes to actually talk about why no one should be penalized if they want to carry on working from home, right? And that is another interesting conversation that we can have, especially because lockdown has been it has been lifted, and things are slowly getting back to normal, but a lot of people actually want to stay at home and work from home. And let's talk about why people shouldn't be penalized if they want to carry on working from home, right? So until then, make sure you stay tuned.